Hello, welcome to another episode of CripChat, your weekly podcast on everything disability. With me tonight, as usual, is David, Daoud, Ibby Dee, and Tim Lachlan.
Hi.
Hello,
Hello.
everyone.
How are we all?
Hope we're doing fine.
That's good to hear.
Tonight, what are we talking about tonight, Tim?
Tonight we're talking about the curb cut effect. So I guess I'll kick us off with what the curb cut effect is and a bit of background about it. So the curb cut effect, it was first documented in response to, I guess, disability advocacy groups back in the 70s and 80s. And when they were campaigning to have curb cuts put in place so people in wheelchairs would be able to access public buildings and stuff. And the curb cut effect describes the benefit that those curb cuts or an accommodation that was originally made for people with disabilities, how that benefits the whole of society. So when you have people who aren't wheelchair users in society and they are using curb cuts for like their strollers, if they've got shopping trolleys and stuff, they're able to use those to get things down. Often workers or construction workers using wagons and trolleys and stuff. So it's really just a term for how accommodations that were initially for people with disabilities or a disadvantaged group have benefited society as a whole. So yeah, I guess our first point about the curb cut effect, I already briefly mentioned it in the introduction, was it extends beyond the physical environment. So when we talk about the curb cut effect, that specifically relates to curb cuts only, but there's also social effects that we can have with the curb cut effect. So for instance, having mixed ability classrooms, education and camp and stuff, those sorts of things have a positive outcome on inclusion and disability normalization, because children get exposed to people with disabilities at a young age, and young people with disabilities also get the chance to participate in activities that they would be able to do just like their peers because accommodations have been made. So it is a relatively new term, but it's always been around, and it's important to, I guess, make people aware of the effect, because then when we advocate for changes, for instance, the NDIS or something, it shows that it could also play over into other areas of society and make things better for everyone in the long run.
I've got a question, Tim.
Yeah.
The curb cut effect, is that still two different levels, but it's just sort of blended in?
Yeah.
Like between the
You
curb
might.
and the straight?
Yeah, exactly. I think they have the tactile things that lead up to where a curb cut is, so you probably feel that. You walk with a cane, don't you?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
would blind people accidentally find it hard to find the the curve where the crossing is?
That's the thing. I don't have experience personally because I'm not vision impaired, but the way it's designed and set up is the tactile things lead to where a curb cut is, and the curb cut is that slope part, so you don't have to step down, which, from my understanding, can be quite difficult if you're vision impaired.
So I know, but see, at the end of the street or the corner, usually you'll have a curve, and that would indicate that's the best place to cross the road. Now, if you do it from the middle of the road, but there's still a curve there, you'll probably walk into a car.
Yeah, the way they're designed is they're meant to follow like a straight pathway and stuff, so they're meant to be easy to navigate no matter what the person's ability. So I think that, it tells you where to cross the road. And that's another point is with curb cuts, they actually save lives because they help people see where to cross the road. Like even sighted people, if they see a curb cut, they think, okay, that's where I need to cross. And that's usually where you see them at crossings anyway.
So it's not the whole street that's blended in, it's just where you cross the road.
Yeah, just where you cross the road. But yeah, having that accessibility feature on like paths and stuff.
Yeah. So, David, do you think they should have along the whole street?
I beg your pardon?
Do you think that they should have the tactiles along the whole street?
You know what? Well, I wouldn't know. I think some places do have them, but it'll be a bit confusing for a blind person to know where to cross. But in saying that, it'll be easy for a person with a wheelchair to go up across the road.
Oh, yeah. And like you said, it's important that we educate young people about disability, not excluding them because of their, I guess, disability, but also making sure that everyone's included in activities, in just a social, I guess, setting. Yeah, one should not be isolated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess where I come from it is first people need to know the basic difference between equity and equality.
Yeah, exactly. That's an important point you raised, Jonathan. The difference between equity and equality, I can find a really good visual for it, but I might be able to share screen that. But a way to describe it verbally is if you give, I guess, a population like people with disabilities more rights. For instance, the more rights could be we've changed laws to better physical access to places so people can participate more. And some people would say, oh, you're giving people with disabilities too many rights, or who's going to have the rights left over for me? People think that rights are something where if you give them to someone, you lose from your own pile. And that's not the case at all. What equity is. Yeah, go on.
That's not the case. You give people equal rights, so people with disability get the same rights, and the people with non-disability get the same rights.
Yeah, exactly. People think if you were to add access to every building, that it's a bad thing, and it's just something done to please the quote-unquote disabled people. But what it actually is it's providing access to people with strollers, to people who are like carrying luggage and stuff. It benefits everyone in society when we make things accessible, and that further goes into normalizing disability because it's part of the built environment. So people with disabilities are able to go out into society and not have physical barriers getting in their way, and that in itself is something that we need to educate the public on as to why we need these changes, and that it's not a case of giving one group more rights than the other. It's something where we're just putting in place measures that let everybody have a fair go.
Yep.
It's like putting people at the same level.
Yeah, exactly. And what equity is versus equality. Equality is giving everybody the same thing, and equity is distributing what, I guess, societal. Sorry, I've lost my words. What resources we have, and putting those towards bettering the lives of a group that are oppressed because of their abilities. So yeah, that's how I can further describe it. If I can find the graphic.
Can you give us an example?
I'll just look up some ways to help me articulate this better. But does anybody else have any other points?
I guess equality is all about basically having the same rights as everybody else. Basically, equality is that we people with disability have the same rights as people with non-disability. With the equity, I'm just trying to think of an example. Yeah.
I'll see if I can share this.
If the audience has an example they want to share, feel free to share.
If the audio tactile indicators is an example
of equity,
because they vibrate for people that are deaf. They sound for people that are blind, and they've also got the visual thing, the green light.
Yes. But equity is, I guess, how can we make our community inclusive for everybody?
Yeah.
I'm just seeing if I can share my screen now. Oh, here we go. We've got it going. All right. Here's this image here. I'll see if I can get it larger.
Can I share it now?
Yeah, you can share it now. Here we go.
Oh yeah, that would be a perfect example.
Yeah, and I guess how we can vision describe it to David is there's three images. In the first image, there's three people of varying heights behind a wooden fence, and they're all standing on the same size box each. And only two of the people are able to see over the fence to watch the game happening. And then the person who's shorter on the single box can't see the game. And that's an example of equality because they all have the same three items. The second image, if I describe it, it's the same three people sitting behind this fence. They've got, one of them is tall enough to see over without the box. The other is standing on one box, and the little boy is standing on two boxes, so he's able to see the game going on. And in our third image, well, sorry, I should say that second image describes equity, which is giving people more resources to make up for their deficits to meet the need so they can participate. And the third image is they've taken away the fence. It's just a chain link fence so they can see through it. And that's removing the barriers as a whole in society. So there's kind of 3 points to this.
Yeah, and I think that is the perfect way to sum it up. Perfect image. Yeah, thanks for showing that, Tim.
Yeah, I find that's a much easier way to convey it, because talking about it, it can seem very one-dimensional, and you kind of need something to help you see it. But yeah, so I will stop screen sharing that now. I'll put myself back up here. But yeah, that's all I can think of regarding points around this topic. Has anybody else got any contributions or ideas?
For example, when I want to go out and eat, at my favorite restaurant, my favorite cuisine. When I go to a building, sometimes it's like, first of all, they got steps. Me being a wheelchair user, I won't be able to go in and enjoy my dinner because there's a barrier there. There's a giant step. I miss out on eating my favorite cuisine because of that barrier. And it makes me I feel frustrated. I feel like I don't belong. Yeah, there goes my whole night. My whole night is ruined. So
also with being visually impaired, we
Yeah.
also miss out on the menu.
that's it. It's things like this. I guess restrict us from being part of being part of the community, being part of society. So to make it more, I guess, to make it more inclusive, you would have writing on the menu or a ramp put there so that everyone.
Or you can have a menu on the internet because some people can't read Braille.
Exactly, easy read or audio descriptive. Yeah, things like that. I guess make it a more inclusive society, but people don't look at it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, I've come up
that's-
with that. I've
Yeah, go
come
on.
up with this. I've got a friend. She's got a disability, and
Yeah.
she tells me her disability can't see her,
Yeah.
and she uses a disabled card.
Oh, yeah.
People will sit there and swear at her because she's fucking in the disabled spot.
Yeah. It all comes back to education stuff, and people need to be taught that just because a disability isn't visible doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
So that's the education we need to give.
Yes.
And they got to teach it at school, and it's not only people that go to school that do this. People that are older and probably within communities, they've got to learn it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one day, I know they've done it in the UK, and I think I've talked about it before, but the comedic sort of education advertisements that they'd had airing in the UK a few years ago, educating the public how to interact with people with disabilities. And what it did was it was just saying, treat us like people, but it was saying it in a really funny way that made it stick. So one day I hope to see stuff like that in Australia, and maybe we can use this organisation to do that one day. But in the meantime, we've got to keep talking about.
We can put out an ad saying not every disability is visible.
Yeah, I reckon that could be something we do in the future. And well, what do you people watching this think of that? Would you like to see some sort of education piece produced by us around disabilities, I feel it would be a good topic. What's everyone's thoughts on that?
Look, yeah, I think it's awesome. But it's not all about just promoting, promoting. I guess about equality and stuff. It's also about educating, which is always mentioned. But it's also just I guess being friends. I guess making friends with people who do not have a disability, and I guess that friendship will kind of people will start to understand that people with disability are not something unique. They're not special. They're not same as others.
Yeah, not something to be
Yeah.
scared of. Yeah.
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 That they're human beings and you can interact, talk.
Exactly, and I guess that's what makes us all, I guess, included. It takes away that equality versus equity bracket.
What I've realized ever since I've gone blind, you can interact with disabled people more easier than people with non-disabilities. They're
Oh
easier.
yeah,
I find that because we have like shared experiences, so that forms the basis of our community.
They're easier to relate to. They're easier to approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no,
Don't be afraid to approach someone that's got disability, and don't be afraid to ask if there's anything. What's the best way they can be of assistance?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And that's a very good point. Yeah. Go on, Ibby. What were you saying?
No, I'm just saying, saying that everybody, people with disability, people non-disability, everybody has, I guess, special, not special, but I guess they have talent. They have their own, I guess, experiences, and they also have their own skills. Every single person has a unique skill.
Like the other day.
You'll be surprised at people that are out there that have these special skills, but sometimes being excluded from the community, they're not able to show off these skills, and so they get left behind.
Yeah, and that comes back to educating everyone, really.
Yeah.
The other day, I was trying to cross the road. I asked the lady, she was crossing the road. I go, "Where's the crossing? Where do I cross from?" She goes, "Me, I speak English."
Oh yeah.
Okay. We need people talking English.
Oh yeah.
Even English isn't always an option for people to speak verbally. So even people with disabilities being aware that there's different types of communication. I know you can learn sign language even if you're vision impaired, because I know they teach it a different way, but you can still communicate with people who wouldn't be able to communicate verbally.
I actually once worked with a guy that was deaf and blind.
Oh yeah.
First day I went to work, the guy that works there walked straight up to the guy that's deaf and blind. He goes, I'm going to let you meet this guy. This guy is deaf and blind. He went straight up to him. He put his hand, he gave him his hand. He took his hand and he started doing some sign language on his hand. And the guy said my name.
Wow.
He said straight out, David.
Like you said, there's many different communication out there. It's all about getting the message across.
Yeah. Yeah, like I admit,
No.
it is difficult when people don't speak English, but nowadays we can use our phones and stuff to translate, and I think people need to be more proactive in trying to have conversations with people who may not speak their language, be it. Yeah.
But I guess the next step will be, why do we have phone applications which could translate the spoken word into sign language and vice versa. So not everyone needs to be fluent in Auslan, and they still can communicate.
Yeah. And I always make the point that comes back to education. But from what I understand, in a fair amount of schools, they're actually teaching Auslan to children, even if they are hearing, so they can communicate with their peers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would help if we all learned Auslan, because learning multiple languages has benefits for your mental health and how your brain works. But not everybody is able to do so. So having an app or something is definitely used. Hopefully, again, by having
And
these conversations, we can promote some app developers to take action and create some sort of app like that.
yeah. No, I agree with Melissa. Everyone deserves a fair go. Spot on. No matter what.
Yeah, exactly.
Spot on. Yeah. It's how do we utilize our skills and use it to our advantage to make us more inclusive in our community.
Yeah, that's another skill. You can kind of develop it. Some people get quite good at advocating for access and change, and we need to not only talk about access and change, but actually go after the people we're trying to have implement it and have these changes brought into place.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I think that could be a topic we potentially do down the line, but if everyone was keen on it, we could potentially look at how to do an access audit. So, for instance, Ibby, you were saying you couldn't get into that place that was serving your favorite dish because it had stairs. So if I showed you how to do an access audit, it's basically just a piece of writing that you give to a business being like, here's why you should put in access, and then maybe they'll fund it themselves, or I think they can get funding from somewhere else. But it's basically a thing asking the business to consider putting in access for people with disabilities. So then you'd be able to visit your restaurant and you would have not only put access there for yourself, but for everybody else. And again, mothers with prams, people with trolleys doing deliveries, it goes on to help everyone. It can be a tiring process, and I do think it sucks that we as people with disabilities have to do that for ourselves sometimes. But
it could be.
It'll be beneficial for the long term.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I see it. Like, it may be an inconvenience to me to have to fight for those rights to have access to somewhere, but in the long run, there's access there for not only myself but for everyone else.
But you know what? the cheapest way of fixing that up is probably doing Uber Eats.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
the
that's
easy
a,
one.
a,
That's the
a
easy
good
one
point.
for everything. Just
Yeah,
give it.
but I guess the point we're trying to convey is why should we as people with disabilities face systemic exclusion just because it's viewed as a expense to make businesses accessible. I mean, with all the stimulus the government is giving now, couldn't one of the initiatives be focused on building a more accessible society? Why are we always on the bottom of the list of priorities?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
It's
well,
really frustrating.
yeah, well, because I know it's frustrating that way, but see, they should if a business was upstairs, they can always if they can't ex- get the people with wheelchairs upstairs, they can also do a shop sitting downstairs and deliver
Yeah,
to them there,
Yeah, exactly.
that's a good way for
which
it.
would cost probably less than an elevator
Mm.
or anything like
Yeah,
that.
it's just solutions like that people need to look at. But yeah, I
There's
agree.
always
It's
there's
not
always
right the way
different
the
ways.
last was thought of.
There's always a different way. Or there's always different techniques of and solutions. If other ways are
Exactly.
going to be expensive and take long.
Exactly. And you're only at the bottom of the, I guess, the table, the ladder, if you feel that you're at the bottom of the table. Um, One should not feel that way. I personally think. Uh, you should always advocate. That
Yeah.
is a sad reality, but you should never give up. Always advocate. In terms of
See,
like expenses, it may cost like say for example $50 to get a portable ramp and put it outside your shop, but you'll get so much revenue from that. When people in
yeah,
wheelchairs come to your shop,
I guess so. I guess so. But also, it's all about planning.
mm, mm. Also,
Yeah,
But,
building planning.
yeah.
but look, there are other ways of implementing it, like businesses could be allowed to
Yep.
write off the value of the additional work if they can prove that by doing around for doing modifications, it's proven to improve business.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
guess so.
Very good.
It'll improve business, and it'll get more people with disabilities coming in.
Yeah.
They'll be more
And
included.
I guess what people need to keep in mind, it's not just about people who have a disability. What about people who are elderly? What about mothers with babies in prams? My point is, doing these changes while expensive at first can be proven to be paid off in the long term. But we have such a short-term mentality that we don't even think about what's gonna position our businesses to make more profit and attract more customers.
It
Yeah.
could also help like people with families that have wheelchairs. Like a family can come in, and one of their family members has a wheelchair. They won't choose that restaurant because that person can't go in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they can have many people there, but that one person can't make it in. So
And they only.
the whole group does not come.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they lose a
Yeah.
group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff.
Was there anything else you wanted to cover, Tim?
No, I think we've covered as much as we can with the curb cut effect. So,
Yeah.
in summary, it's a term for including people with disabilities by building the environment to give us access, and in doing so, that gives access to everyone, not just people with disabilities, but as we've said, mothers with prams, construction workers with trolleys and stuff, shoppers, anyone pushing anything. It has benefits to the whole of society, and even if it's policy stuff that we're changing, so allowing people with cognitive disabilities into universities and all that, it has positive flow-on effects for everyone.
Yeah.
I guess to frame it in a way which will make sense to persons of a more liberal ideology is making society can only expand opportunities and potentially also expand potential economic growth.
Yeah, if they include disability, it's a potential for economic gain.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, it's fun.
Not that money is the most important thing, but I think it's important to also explore that aspect. For instance, when disabled people enroll in university, they need extra support. Now, one could argue that the cost of providing those supports outweighs the benefits of the student getting a degree. But if you argue from an economic point of view, you could argue, well, if the person with a disability has a degree, they have more earning potential, which in the long term returns the benefit to society.
Yeah, that's a good point you make.
It'll benefit society.
Yeah, exactly. As Melissa says, never stop advocating for equality for everyone. And I think that's a good point to end this episode on, is just remember to advocate for equality. Although it can be tiring, it's a process that pays off in the end, because generations after us won't have to have that fight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Melissa, that's why we're all here doing this podcast. We're not in it for money or for any other gains. We're here to give people with disabilities a voice, and if that makes some able-bodied people a bit uncomfortable, well, good. At least we've exposed an inequality which they can then address.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Because if we bring it to light, it is an uncomfortable subject, but it is change for the better for everyone in the long run.
Yep, sure.
Anything else?
No, I think we've covered most of it.
Yeah,
It's
I'm in the
good.
same boat. I think we've covered it all.
Yeah.
Well, what I will endeavor to do is I'll have a look at the document, see if it can be summarized into a blog post, and then probably early next week for the viewers listening will post it on ad.org.au.
Yeah,
Sounds
sounds
good.
like a good idea.
Okay. You've been listening or watching to CripChat. Remember, for us to grow, share, like, and if you can, please subscribe.
Subscribe, please. Yeah. Like and share. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Like and
everyone.
share.
See you, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.